They mapped 4,000 galaxies, they caged stars, they erased entire civilizations without losing a single soldier. Then one scout ship touched down on a small blue rock circling a nothing star and never called home again. No wreckage. No distress signal, just silence. And somewhere in the dark, something on that planet was already smiling. The Korvath Dominion had never lost a war, not one. In 11,000 years of expansion, they had rolled through star systems like a wildfire through dry grass. Their commanders didn't plan for defeat because defeat wasn't a word in their language anymore. They'd retired it. So when the scout ship Ashvane dropped out of warp above a modest blue-green planet on the edge of a nameless spiral arm, nobody back at command batted an eye. Standard procedure. Scan the rock, tag the species, move on to the next conquest. The Dominion had a name for what they were looking for. Apex predators. Species who ruled their food chain, who fought back, who made conquest interesting. Most planets gave them nothing a euro, just prey animals hiding in the mud. Boring. Easy. Beneath them. Captain Threl Vashka, 300 years old and decorated in 17 campaigns, leaned over the sensor array as the Ashvane broke. Population reading. 8 billion. Captain. Fractured into competing factions. Primitive fossil fuel tech, nuclear-capable, orbital satellites. Threl almost laughed. Nuclear-capable. Cute. Send the greeting protocol. Standard first contact. Let's see what kind of animals we're dealing with. The ship descended over a stretch of desert in a place the humans called Nevada. Cameras rolled. Threl expected panic, prayer, maybe worship. That's how it usually went a euro. Primitives seeing gods fall from the sky. Instead, within 4 minutes, military radio chatter exploded across every frequency that Ashvane could pick up. Not fear, not confusion. Coordinates. They're calling in a strike, said the comms officer, disbelief thick in his voice. Threl frowned. That wasn't the reaction of prey. Prey ran, prey hid. This species was doing math. Recall the ship. We've seen enough for a first pass. But it was already too late. On the ground, a young Air Force sergeant named Danny Reyes was staring up at a 100-meter black hull hovering over his base, and he wasn't scared. He was furious. Y'all really just parked that thing over restricted airspace? He muttered, grabbing his radio. Command! We got a bogey the size of a stadium sitting on our doorstep. Permission to light it up? Nobody back on the Ashvane understood yet. They thought they'd found another world of animals. They had actually just knocked on humanity's front door a euros, and humanity doesn't do polite introductions when something uninvited shows up armed. The missile that hit the Ashvane wasn't advanced. It wasn't elegant. It was a modified surface-to-air platform, older than Sergeant Reyes himself, patched together with tech the Dominion would have called Stone Age. It still tore a 40-foot hole clean through the hull. Threl Vashka had never felt his ship shudder like that. Alarms screamed. The Ashvane, a vessel that had survived plasma storms and asteroid fields, was bleeding atmosphere into the Nevada sky because of a weapon these creatures built with scrap metal and stubbornness. Get us out of here! Threl roared. Gripping the console as sparks rained down, they limped back into orbit, hull venting, 3 crew dead. Threl stood in the wreckage of his own bridge and did something he hadn't done in 3 centuries of service. He was rattled. Command back on the Dominion capital didn't believe the report at first. A species with rockets from what looked like their industrial infancy had damaged a warship. It had to be luck, a fluke, so they sent more ships, bigger ones. 12 cruisers, this time cloaked in atmosphere over major cities, watching, learning, cataloging human behavior before the next move. What they cataloged terrified them more than any weapon could. They watched humans build bunkers in weeks. They watched world governments euro, who couldn't agree on a single trade deal a month earlier euro, unite overnight into something called a joint command. They watched factories that made cars start printing railguns instead. They watched civilians, actual untrained civilians, volunteer for suicide missions with something the Dominion's language had no direct word for. The closest translation was spite. They don't fight like the others we've conquered, reported Dominion analyst Sarah Nix, reviewing the footage with a tightness in her throat. Every other species we've broken, they fought to survive. These ones, the angrier we make them, the smarter and more organized they get. It's like violence sharpens them. General Korvath, overseeing the invasion from high orbit, dismissed it. Fear response. Nothing more. Prepare full deployment. We end this quickly, before their morale hardens. Sarah didn't argue. But she'd already seen enough history logs, human ones, hacked from their own networks, a Euros, 2 world wars, resistance movements, insurgencies that outlasted empires 10 times stronger than themselves. She whispered to no one in particular, "General, I don't think you understand what we just woke up." Down on Earth, Danny Reyes was handed a new rifle and a simple order. Time to remind these tourists whose planet this is. The Dominion's full invasion force hit Earth's atmosphere 3 weeks later. 200 warships, an army of drop troops, and enough firepower to crack a moon in half. By every metric the Dominion had ever used to measure a conquest, humanity should have folded in 72 hours. It took them 4 days to realize humanity wasn't folding. It was adapting. Every weapon the Dominion used, humans studied within hours. Captured plasma rifles got reverse-engineered in makeshift labs running on generator power and pure grit. Downed fighters had their hulls stripped for materials before the wreckage even stopped smoking. Human engineers, soldiers, teenagers with laptops a Euros, all of them throwing themselves at the problem. Like it was the only thing that mattered, because it was. "They're not soldiers," Sarah Nix reported, voice shaking as she reviewed casualty numbers that kept climbing on the Dominion's side. "They're improvisers. We hit them, and instead of breaking, they get creative." General Korvath refused to retreat. Pride wouldn't let him. He ordered a full ground assault on the humans' eastern seaboard, expecting to crush resistance in one decisive strike. Danny Reyes was there, dug into a collapsed subway tunnel with 40 other soldiers, a mixed unit of Army regulars, National Guard, and volunteers who'd picked up a gun for the first time that same week. "They think we're gonna run," Danny said, checking the charge on a scavenged Dominion rifle bolted onto a human frame. "Y'all ready to show 'em otherwise?" Nobody answered with words. They answered by moving into position. The battle that followed didn't look like anything the Dominion's war colleges had trained for. Humans didn't fight in clean formations. They fought dirty, smart, and mean Euros ambushes in subway tunnels, EMP traps rigged from car batteries, snipers using human intuition to predict alien tactics faster than alien tactics could adjust. Dominion troopers, genetically bred for war, started reporting something they'd never logged before in any species: hesitation. Not from humans, from themselves, because for the first time in 11,000 years, the hunters had found something that hunted back Euros and enjoyed it. General Korvath watched his ground forces collapse street by street from his command ship, jaw tight, hands trembling with a feeling he refused to name: fear. "Pull back the fleet," he finally ordered. "Full retreat. Regroup at Euros, belay that." Threl Vashka's voice cut through the comms from the wounded, Ashvane, still limping in low orbit. "There is no regrouping, General. Look up. Every human satellite, every repurposed rocket, every jury-rigged railgun on the planet's surface was locking on at once." The sky over Earth lit up like the 4th of July a Euros, if the 4th of July came with warhead-grade fireworks, and 8 billion people cheering from their basements. Humanity's counterstrike wasn't elegant. It wasn't disciplined by Dominion standards. It was a coordinated, ugly, beautiful mess of every nation on the planet finally pointing the same direction at the same enemy, and firing everything they had all at once. 3 Dominion cruisers went dark in the first 90 seconds, then 6, then 11. General Korvath's flagship took a direct hit from a modified rocket that human engineers had built in 11 days, using salvaged alien tech and stubborn American ingenuity. The bridge exploded into chaos, emergency lighting flooding red. "Status!" Korvath screamed. "We're losing shields, sir." "They're Euros, they're targeting our weak points." "How do they know our weak points?" Because Sarah Nix already knew the answer, and it chilled her to the core. Humans had studied every scrap of Dominion wreckage from the first battle, cataloged every failure point, and shared it across their entire species in hours through something they called the Internet. They didn't just fight. They learned faster than the Dominion could evolve tactics. On the ground, Danny Reyes stood on a hilltop outside a burning Dominion command post, watching alien warships fall from the sky like dying stars. His unit Euros, what was left of it Euros, stood beside him, exhausted, bloody, and grinning like fools. "Y'all see that?" he said, voice hoarse but proud. "They came in here thinking we were just another planet to check off a list." "Guess they didn't do their homework," muttered a soldier beside him, watching another cruiser break apart in the upper atmosphere. Within 6 hours, what remained of the Dominion fleet retreated into deep space, leaving behind wreckage, prisoners, and a report that would be read in hushed tones across 1,000 conquered worlds for generations. Threl Vashka, the only surviving captain of the original invasion force, filed the final entry into the Dominion War Archive himself. Hands shaking as he typed, "Do not return to the third planet of this system. Do not send scouts. Do not send envoys. Whatever that species is, it does not surrender, does not break, and does not forget. We came looking for a new conquest. We found something worse, a species that turns every attack against it into a lesson, every loss into a weapon, and every enemy into a warning to the next one foolish enough to try. We picked a fight with humanity. We did not win. We are lucky to have survived long enough to warn you. Leave that world alone." Back on Earth, Danny Reyes watched the last Dominion ship vanish into the night sky, stars settling back into place like nothing had happened at all. He lit a cigarette, exhaled slow, and said what every soldier standing beside him was already thinking. Should have just left us alone. Somewhere out there, across 1,000 worlds who'd never even heard of Earth, a legend was just getting started, and it was written in humanity's own stubborn, unbreakable blood.